Welcome back to the Sports Management Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Insport Education and their new online course, The Foundation of Sport Business. With course modules delivered by sport business experts at companies like the NFL, the Football Association, and Formula E, the Foundations of Sport Business course equips you with everything you need to know to get on or accelerate your career in sport. And for you listeners, I have a great deal. With the code Sports Management Podcast 10, you will get 10% off the course price. Click the link in the description below and sign up to the course today. Now, let's kick off the episode. Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Today's guest is the director and co-founder at Winners FDD. She has operated in the sports industry for over 30 years, including 3 years in the US during the 1994 FIFA World Cup. Now her focus is on the area of CRM and BI in the sports industry. She is also the author of the best-selling book Winning with Data, CRM and Analytics for the Business of Sports. Here to teach us more about the use of data in sports, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast, Fiona Green.
Thank you, Marcus. And I was actually hoping that after you said I've been in the sports industry for over 30 years, I thought you were going to say something like, well, I must have started when I was 5 or something like that.
I should have added that in. So, how are you, first of all?
Yes, very well, thank you. And thanks for promoting the book. I don't know if you were aware, but it was also, it's published by Routledge, Global Academic and Management Publishers. They also supported me with a second edition, so it was republished with an updated version in March this year. So I was very proud of that.
Yes, I've actually seen that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
If we jump right into the book right away, it's about CRM and BI, so business intelligence. Can you just clear out these terms for us a little bit?
Yeah, so firstly, just asking me to clear out these terms could take a whole hour in itself. So CRM, it's the biggest 3-letter word that's ever been created. So it stands for Customer Relationship Management as an abbreviation, as an acronym. But actually, when it was first created, that term 15 or 20 years ago, it meant something very different to what it means now. The principle of managing your relationship with your customers is always going to be the same. But of course, 20 odd years ago, they were talking about software that allows you to, track the relationship you have with someone on a B2B basis. So, for example, if I was selling insurance or stationery, I'd be tracking the details of how that sales call is going with my client. If I'm managing to move them through different sales phases and get them to sign a contract, that principle's still the same. But of course, we're in a digital world now, a much more digital world than we were 20 years ago. And CRM has actually evolved to mean something more than just tracking that sales relationship with an entity or with a B2B entity. It's much more about how you engage with individuals. And while for many organisations in sports, getting them to purchase at the end of it is still going to be very much an objective, there are other objectives as well, because sometimes just increasing engagement might be an objective. And particularly for national governing bodies, not clubs and teams, but certainly for the national governing bodies, getting somebody to play the sport can be an objective. So getting somebody to pull on a pair of football boots and run around on a field instead of using a FIFA game can be an objective. And getting them to continue playing the sport even when they turn 18 and go to university. And that's not actually a sale, but it's still very much about that engagement piece and keeping your customers, your fans, your participants with you every step of the journey. So CRM has evolved from that very traditional, primarily B2B sales process with a customer to actually the way you engage with people to in effect get them to do what you want them to do, whether it's enter an online competition, register for, an account, or indeed actually transact, play a game, become a referee, learn how to be a coach, etc., etc. On the analytics side of business intelligence, so we use 2 phrases. We use business intelligence and we use analytics. And the best definition I've seen that I like to use is BI, business intelligence, is the art of analysing historic data to understand what happened. Why did we sell this many tickets? How come this event wasn't well supported? And that, of course, helps you understand what you should do next. So if, for example, you're looking at your Google Analytics statistics and you can see a story wasn't very popular, you know not to post that type of story again, or you know not to post it at that time, or you know to change your writing style. So that to me is business intelligence, understanding, analysing historic data to understand what happened in the past and helping you make your decisions. Whereas analytics is about analysing the historic data to actually predict what's going to happen in the future. And of course, that's really important for many rights owners, particularly when it comes to things like understanding capacity at a football match. How many tickets am I likely to sell? It's really useful for cash flow forecasting and definitely for negotiating deals, negotiating sponsor contracts, for example. So we talk about data being used for two key functions. One, to help with decision making, and two, to help with targeted marketing. And CRM and BI, or any other phrase you want to use, sort of encompasses all of that. Very long answer to a very short question, Marcus. My apologies.
You said that you could take an hour, so I think that you said it very efficiently there in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So how well would you say that the sports industry is working with the CRM and BI?
That's a really good question. So up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I was saying, wow, the sports industry is so far behind other industries, travel, finance, telco. And up until 2 or 3 years ago, I was even saying that within sports, the American sports are flying and Europe's behind America. I think I've tempered my beliefs and my messaging these days. I think whatever industry you're in, there are people who are doing it brilliantly and everybody else is trying to play catch up. So in the sports industry, you have a handful of rights owners who are doing it brilliantly. And then you have people who are doing it well and they're on the path. And then you've even got rights owners who aren't doing anything about it at all yet, entirely. Of course, when it comes to the pure plays, so businesses that are purely online, you would expect them to be better than those businesses like sports clubs and governing bodies who have a bricks and mortar business and they've had to adopt the business of transacting online or engaging online. But organizations like Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, even the company you work for, their whole business is about selling stuff online. So of course they're going to be much better at it, in my opinion. Not necessarily better at the engagement, but definitely better at utilizing data, because of course data is generated by technology. Their businesses were born with technology, whereas most sports rights owners weren't born with technology. They were born with running around on a field, throwing, jumping, etc.
And there's a lot of analyzing data and you need to know what that means. Would you say that today the most sports organizations are having this knowledge in-house, or is this outsourced, or how is this usually managed?
So obviously I can't speak to the whole industry. I can only talk about the organizations that I've had personal exposure to. I would suggest that there's a big spectrum of solutions. There are rights owners, again, those elite rights owners who are leading the way in this area, who've really understood and appreciated the value and have justified bringing more people in-house to do it. Because, of course, you'd always want to use the knowledge and the experience in-house. But because this is still quite an area that many struggle with, there's service providers like me and my competitors who are still providing an outsourced service. But of course, we're trying to educate the sports industry to bring those skills inside. We almost want to make ourselves redundant, because once we can teach our clients what we can do at that level, at a basic level, then they can become sufficient to do it themselves. And then we can progress them by teaching them the next level and then the next level. The challenge they have, not just the sports industry, but any industry, is there's a massive shortage of data skills. And indeed, you'll read in the latest edition of the book that I refer to a report published by the European Union that said, I think in 2018, there were 571,000 unfilled job vacancies with data in the title, because they just couldn't get the skills. So I think that's the challenge, not just for the sports industry, but for any industry. So there's a combination of solutions, people doing it in-house, people using third-party providers, and then people just not doing it at all.
I can just look at my own education. I mean, I had a great bachelor's degree during my 4 years, but it wasn't a lot of focus on data. Do you think that's something that will change going forward?
Marcus, it's the reason we produced an e-learning course. So I wrote the book because when I first moved into this field, I had to do a lot of self-learning, self-teaching, and it took me ages. You know, you Google what is CRM and all you see is adverts for Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce. So the first reason I wrote the book was to try and make it easier for people to understand what this stuff's really about, because I'm not an academic. I think I write in a very easy style that people can pick it up quite quickly. But then because I felt that wasn't enough, that's when I launched the e-learning course, like your sponsor partner as well. You know, e-learning is such a fantastic way for people to educate. And I guess that was exacerbated because of COVID, with people needing to do things from their desk, from their home office, etc. That's why I created the course, because it is such a complex area. And there are many universities that are trying to include data into their modules. But in the same way that there's a shortage of data knowledge in industry, there's a shortage of data knowledge in those courses. I think that, you know, data is growing in its importance, and it will continue to grow in its importance. And, you know, more podcasts are asking me to talk about data. News articles are talking about data. So I think that university courses bringing more data into their sports management, sport businesses or sports marketing courses is going to happen. And there are examples of universities already either giving whole modules over to data, or even dedicated courses to data, but just not with the quantity, you know, that I would hope. I would hope there would be a lot more sports business courses with whole modules dedicated to data.
Yeah. And you mentioned there with your book that you're writing it in a simple way. And I read somewhere also in the reviews that it said that you were explaining a difficult subject in an easy way. So I think that's very important, because I would assume that many people are afraid of data and statistics because they are thinking, it's mathematical and it's difficult, and then you just don't do it.
You're absolutely right, Marcus. And it's not just that it's mathematical and it's statistical and therefore people think it's complicated. It takes a lot of different entities, a lot of different individuals and a lot of different skill sets for people to be able to achieve what businesses actually want, which is, you know, we use data to give us what we call those actionable insights, the things that we can see that are going to help us make decisions and make a difference. And so to pull that all together, you know, we talk about in the book and in our course and in the work we do 5 key principles. You need a strategy. You need to understand what you're trying to achieve. You need data, but it's not all data. It's just the data that's relevant to the strategy. Of course, you do need technology, but technology is not the driver. It should never be the driver. So this is where our industry gets into trouble. It's when people buy the technology because the technology is going to give them a silver bullet. It's going to give them a quick answer. So the technology is the enabler, not the driver. Then we also talk about the need for process. I mean, you mentioned before we joined this call that you use Salesforce. Well, Salesforce is a great piece of technology, but if you aren't using the correct processes with Salesforce, and if the data within Salesforce is outdated or dirty, it's not going to work anyway. So we have to think about process. And then back to one of the starting points of our discussion, it comes down to cultural acceptance. So we talk about culture, cultural silos, and a lack of acceptance of the importance of data, perhaps because of that fear that you referred to. So it does take a whole lot of skills and knowledge. On top of that, we've got data legislation. And here in the EU, we've got the GDPR, and it's got this massive €20 million fine attached to it. So, yeah, I think you're right. People run scared. So we need to make it simple for them to understand. We need to make it simple for them to see the benefit to them. And we need to make it simple for them to get started.
It's a very interesting issue that you brought up with the GDPR, because from a privacy standpoint, I think that many people found that very, very important. But from a data and analytics standpoint, would you say that that might have been not a roadblock, but maybe one more obstacle?
Yeah, so it's definitely another challenge that people need to overcome. Of course, we talk about it being an opportunity. But you made a statement at the start of that sentence, Marcus, people are concerned about privacy. Well, how many people? How many people are actually concerned about privacy? Because for every piece of research that says this many people are concerned about privacy, there's another piece of research that says this many people would rather have a personalised service. And I know myself, there's no point in talking about an individual. We have to talk about the mass. But you think about your own behaviour. I love the fact that when I go to Amazon, it intuitively knows what I'm interested in. I love the fact that when I log into Netflix, it'll tell me what sort of films I should be watching that are linked to the ones I watched before. So here's the question. Would you rather, in this time-sensitive world we live in, where we just don't have time anymore, would you rather have a service provider know what you're interested in, or would you rather spend the time to scroll? So there is a percentage of people that don't like data and they don't like things to be known about them, but it's not the mass. It's not yet the majority of people. It's still very much the minority of people. And that's why the GDPR is there, and not just the GDPR, but data legislation around the world. It's to protect those people that are concerned. And, as somebody who works in this space, it's our job to ensure that the rights of the individuals are protected. Of course they are. But there's a flip side to that, Marcus. If they don't know what they're missing, how do they know that they don't want it? But
exactly,
I think it is a blocker because it's a challenge. But what we have to do is get our clients to see the opportunity to respect the views of those people that want to unsubscribe, opt out of cookies, use an incognito browser, but make sure that everybody who, like me, for example, would rather have a personalised service, does indeed get that personalised service.
I would agree with you there, but I don't like the fact that my information is being sold afterwards.
Well, information shouldn't be sold, and that's what the legislation's all about. And I don't know if you saw the big hack and you know about the Cambridge Analytica principle, but your data shouldn't be sold. The only instance in which your data should be sold is if you've given clear and explicit permission for that data to be sold. There's no other instance under when it should be sold.
This episode is sponsored by Insport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Our next sponsor is ExpressVPN. If you, like me, are tired of not being able to access different Netflix libraries in your country, or watch sports games not available in your country, then ExpressVPN is for you. All listeners of this podcast get 3 months for free when signing up for a 1-year package. Visit tryexpressvpn.com/sportsmpodcast to learn more. You can find the link in the description below. I saw that you made a poll on Twitter at your Winners CRM. It was very interesting, and it said that how many team members do you have that focus on data-driven marketing and analytics for business, not performance? And 1/3 said that they have no dedicated team for this.
Yeah, they're the team that we talked about. They're the people, the rights owners that have... I can see you on video. Your listeners can't see you on video. You just shrugged your shoulders as if to say, I don't believe it. How can that be the case?
Yeah.
When you think about the structure of the professional game here in England, okay, so we have the Premier League, obviously, then the Championship, and then League One and League Two. In League One, there won't be anybody dedicated to business analytics. There won't be anybody dedicated to targeted communications. In League One, there will be people who know how to post on social. There will be people who know how to post on websites. There will even be people who've taught themselves how to send email campaigns. But there will be nobody who's dedicated to analysing the results of those posts and those campaigns and those activities to help the business understand which direction they should go in. And even at the Championship level, I would suggest there probably aren't that many dedicated analytics people either.
Yeah. And since we are talking percentages here, a previous guest on this podcast is Jeff Wilson.
Ah, Jeff.
Yes.
We love Jeff.
We do. And I think he was on episode 7, and he sent it to me a couple of days ago. He has a new model or a research about this that he made together with the Bas Schnatter.
Yes, and if you haven't had Bas on yet, you should have him next as well.
Then I should definitely do that. I haven't had him yet. But I will just read you the title, and then you will take it from there. And it says, 61% of all sports organizations do not use data for their overall strategy.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there going, how come? How can this happen? And of course, I know that because I work in the industry.
Yeah.
It is. It's just a reality. It's why we have a business, why we have an opportunity. It's why I wrote the book. It's why I wrote the course. We need to upskill people. We need to help people understand the importance of this. But it's not just the sports industry that's suffering the shortages of skills. It's the whole world, So we need, I don't know if we need schools and, as you point out, schools and universities to be adding more data into their course programs. I mean, all I would say to any of your listeners, Marcus, is if they're at a point in their career where they're deciding which way to go, if they've got any interest whatsoever in data, definitely go that way because you'll have a job for life.
Yeah. So, you have mentioned a lot of the importance of data, but in your book, chapter 3 is called The Importance of Data. So just to summarize or give like the most important, why do sports organizations, why do they need to implement data right now?
Because they give you a foundation. Data gives you a foundation for your decision making. When you make a decision based on data, you're making a decision based on fact. Now, often we make decisions based on our gut instincts. We make a decision because someone told us to. We make a decision based on our experience. But when we're making a decision based on data, we have the facts. We might still choose to go with a different decision because there's some other reason why we have to do so. But we should take the fact and then put on top of that our gut instinct, our experience, because our boss told us to. But, somebody who I knew many, many years ago said, when you've got data, you can tell your boss they're wrong.
If that's not a good enough reason, I don't know what is.
There you go. But simple reason is you're making a decision based on fact.
Yeah. But there is a difference between data and information.
Yeah, so it's the insight.
Yeah, so exactly. So the first step is to collect the data, but then you also need to...
It's the insight. You need to know how to manipulate the data to get the insight out of it. So without a shout, it's not the data itself, it's what you do with it. It's the insight you can get from it. It's the way you use it. The strapline for our company is acquire, It's acquire, analyze, and engage. So it's the way you collect the data, what you do with it. It's the way you collect the data, the way you manipulate it, the way you manage it, and then what you actually do with it to drive that targeted marketing or to help you make that decision, the two of which, of course, are closely linked. It's funny you should say that, actually, because, there are people who, they're thinking about what title should I give my new head of CRM, what title should I, and they do like the word insight. I tell you why I struggle with insight is because, the role of agencies like Kantar, for example, the role of agencies is to do mass market research. They'll get a group of 220 or 2,000 people in a room and say, what do you prefer, X or Y? What do you think, A or B? But that's what I call it. That's anonymized market research data. And I think the term insights is so closely wedded to that I always think if we use the term data, we're actually thinking about noughts and ones in a box. We're actually thinking about structured data in a database. But you're right. It's the information that you can get from the data. It's not the data actually itself. But data is a shorter word. It's only got 4 letters.
That's true. In the second segment, we usually get to know the guest a little more and about themselves and their career. So if you don't mind telling us like how you started in sports and your journey up until today.
Marcus, it's not a great story. I'm a poster child for everything you should not do. So because of my background, I have a wonderful family, but because of the hard life that we had growing up, I actually left school at 16. Not only did I had some very good, what we called back then, we had O-levels. I had some very good O levels, but I had no A levels. I didn't do the next level of high school. And that's because of my family background and my need to get out and earn some money. Don't get me wrong, my son and my stepson went to university because I massively understand the value of good education.
Yeah.
I just didn't go that route. And also, 40 years ago or 35 years ago, going to university and getting an education didn't have the same emphasis that it has today. So anyway, I took a job selling. I was selling photocopiers. I was selling, working in a hotel and all the rest of it. And to be honest with you, I wanted a company car. And I realised to get a company car, I needed to be in sales. So I managed to get myself a job at a local football club selling advertising space. Marcus, before I got that job, I didn't even know football clubs sold advertising space. Okay, so I'd only been to 2 football matches in my life. So it was a massive learning curve for me. But I've been here ever since. I've been in the sports industry ever since. And people will tell you who work in the sports industry, it's a great place to be. There's so much passion, there's so much excitement. And on the grassroots side, grassroots sport, I love how important grassroots is for a community, how important it is to teach children some great life skills, how important it is for our health and well-being. And on the professional side, I love what sports can do to people. It can make you cry with tears of passion and cry with tears of sadness. It can generate revenue for a whole community. You look at what an international event does in terms of putting the spotlight on a country. So there's just so much I love about it. But because I was primarily I've worked in 20 years in sponsorship. Out of my 20 of my 30 years, I was selling sponsorship. And because when you sell sponsorship, you have to know about the industry you're selling to or the business you're selling to, I was able to learn an awful lot about other industries. So firstly, it was about marketing. Sponsorship is part of the marketing mix. And because I was selling to financial sector, travel sector, a telecommunications sector, etc., I was learning about their industries as well. So even though I spent 30 years in the sports industry, I think because of the roles I've had, I'm quite well rounded to understand how other industries operate as well. So I had a great career selling sponsorship. I worked with FIFA and UEFA for many years, the IAAF, the IOC, from my humble beginnings selling advertising for a football club. I went self-employed probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and I've never looked back since. I was a consultant, an individual consultant representing rights owners in the sale of their intellectual property rights. And then I came into this field of CRM and data about 9 years ago. Worked with a fantastic gentleman at Good Form, the Good Form Group. Unfortunately, his life was cut short because of cancer. And I ended up with my own entity, which, as you've already mentioned, is Winners, set us up about 8 years ago.
That's an interesting journey. And I mean, you mentioned that you didn't have the academic background yourself, but I mean, there are different routes forward.
There are different routes forward, and I was very lucky. So whilst there are different routes forward, and I do believe in the value of vocational studies and vocational skills, I do believe that if somebody has the ability and the circumstances to go to university, it's definitely a better route.
Yeah.
But I didn't follow a traditional route, but it still worked out for me. But I've had a lot of good mentors along the way. I'm a big believer in the power of good mentors, networking. And I've also been very fortunate to have some very, very good bosses. I've also had some very bad bosses, but the bad bosses have taught me things as well. They've taught me how not to do things. And of course, the good bosses have taught me the way that I should be doing things. So I've been very fortunate because I've had people around me that have helped me massively and guided me massively. And to be honest with you, Marcus, it's one of the reasons I'll do all these podcasts and guest lecturing at university, write the book, share the courses, because I genuinely believe in helping people, helping them with their next step, because I've had so much help along my route, along my career path. Yeah. And I'm still getting help even today. I'm still learning from people who are prepared to share their knowledge and talent with me.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate that you are talking with us here. And I think if this podcast is someone is keeping count, I think that the mentorship and the networking has been mentioned a lot of times. So that's definitely something that most guests emphasize on.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's important.
Yeah,
I think it's important not just in the sports industry. I think it's not just important in careers, but it's important in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you have people who you can turn to, or people who are prepared to support you and help you.
For sure. And in your current role as a director, what does this role include? And do you have a team that you work with?
Yeah, so we're a small business. We've got a team of 8 people. So I've got some very talented and brilliant team members that have been with me for a long time. I've got 4 members of staff that have been with me 5 years or more. And then, yes, we've got other staff members who've been with us in varying number of years, 2 years or 1 year, whatever. We've got such a wide and varied client base, from UEFA and AS Roma to British Weightlifting and Lincoln City Football Club. So a huge range of vastly different clients. We don't have a standard or typical day because our clients' needs are not standard or typical. I think the sports industry, we're not very good at strategic planning. So we tend to be doing a lot of things at the last minute. So we're constantly kept on our toes. And of course, as anyone in the sports industry who comes on your podcast will agree, it's not a 9 till 5 job either.
No.
So, but we love it. My team love working in sports. They love the clients. We're very fortunate to have some great people that we work for and great people that work with us. So every day's like a holiday, Marcus. It's not coming to work.
I'm glad to hear it, and I'm very curious to know now, as a director, in your leadership style, are you a boss who tells them what they're doing wrong or how they should do it right?
Well, I'm definitely not a boss that tells them what they're doing wrong, because I'm surrounded by people who are a heck of a lot smarter than me. I think in terms of my leadership style, again, I've benefited from having some really good bosses. But I do remember 2 people in particular. When I worked in New York on the 1994 World Cup, there were 2 women who worked for a client. And I remember one of them was not particularly nice. And then one of them was really, really nice. And, one of them was called Jackie. And when Jackie said jump, you jumped, but you really didn't want to. But when Teddy said jump, you said, how high? How high do you want me to go? And you would jump however much she wanted you to. And so I believe that I like to think that my management style, my leadership styles is based very much on Teddy. We trust our colleagues to do the job. We don't micromanage. We're not as relaxed and loose as Google, this principle of turn up whenever you want and you don't even take whatever holiday you want. Because we're such a small organization, we need a little bit more structure. But we definitely empower the colleagues to do what they want. They have to be fulfilled, they have to be supported, and they have to have some form of development. I come from the Richard Branson school of thought. If you ask him who's the most important people in your world, and he'll say his staff, not his clients, because if his staff aren't happy, his clients are never going to be happy. So I definitely come from that school of thought.
Yeah, I agree with that too. A question that is asked in these pandemic times, I would say, is obviously how the pandemic has affected your job.
Yeah, so look, it's been a challenging time for so many people, but I have to say, Marcus, me personally, my family, my friends, my clients and my colleagues, we've all come out of it, or we're coming through it still with our happiness and our health intact. And I'm forever thankful for that, particularly when there are so many people who've not been as fortunate. So the impact it's had on our business isn't huge. I mean, we've just carried on working the way we were working, and we've picked up more business the way you would expect us to pick up more business. But we haven't tried to take advantage of the misfortune. We've even done work pro bono to help organisations out, and we've tried to help our local community as much as we can, making donations, giving laptops, etc. But one thing that's we've seen as an industry, of course, data has always been important. Well, data is inherently linked to digital, There's still a few people who don't get the link between data and digital. But if you get that digital has become more important because of COVID, then you have to accept that data has become more important because of COVID. So to that extent, it's definitely put a highlight on the work that we do and the importance of the work that we do. And that can only, lead to future growth for our industry and future growth to our business. I think one of my favourite observations, though, and I've actually included it in the book, is that analytics is all about modelling data and coming up with models. I think one of the best observations I had is that all those models we built pre-COVID are going to have to change now, because people's behaviour have changed. We've lost 1.5 years or at least a year of transactional data. People, unfortunately, have lost their jobs. They've lost some of their earning incomes, their earning power, so their disposable income is not as high. They might have also changed their priorities. They might have thought the most important thing to do on a Saturday afternoon was watch their club play football. But having gone through COVID, maybe even have lost somebody, they might have evaluated or reevaluated their priorities. So I do think that that's another learning that's come out of it. We're going to have to definitely go back and do some remodeling of our work that we've done in the past. So I would say it's had a big impact. I wouldn't say it's necessarily had a profound impact. I think the impact on helping people understand how to engage and to use data to engage has been fast-tracked because of it. You think about, we always talk about when it comes to a club, we're not just trying to help them monetize the people that can fit in the stadium or the people that come in the stadium. We're trying to help them monetize everybody that they engage with. Because not everybody can come to your stadium because they might live on the other side of the country. They might not have the finances to come. They might not have the time to come. But they're still a customer. They're still a fan. And we need to find a way to engage with them and use them to our benefit. Well, that principle of not everybody can come to your stadium that we want our clients to think about has been forced upon them because nobody could come to the stadium. Nobody. So they had to shift from thinking, how do I fill my stadium with tickets, to how do I maintain engagement and find a way to monetize when they can't buy tickets. And that's the message that we want people to think about, that your stadium is only ever, or your venue or your event is only ever going to have a capacity audience. So you should be planning your strategies for everybody who can't even be within that audience, because thanks to digital, our reach is very, very far. Our digital reach is so extensive. So I think that's a positive that's come out of it. It's had rights owners think about how to engage with people who can't come to the stadium.
For sure. And again, to mention Jeff, he was telling us about his fan engagement model. And I hope I don't butcher it here now, but it had four parts. And it was game day at the stadium, game day not at the stadium, not game day at the stadium, and not game day not at the stadium. Yeah. And that's what you talked about there too. You need to take care of your fans that they don't have the ability to be at the stadium.
That's right. Absolutely. So we've got to think about a 24/7, 365 audience. And actually, I remember having worked at a football club in my very first job in sports, Notts County Football Club. And we had conference and banqueting. We had a room that was used on match days. And of course, we used to sell it for parties and weddings and things like that. But over the last 30 years, we saw the change where if you're a football club and you have 24 days of sport, you've got to think about how you can use your facilities for all the other years in the calendar. And digital has taken that principle and just magnified it. It's about making sure that whatever time zone your fans are in, whatever part of the world, whatever platform they're using, whatever technology they have in their hands or in their home, they have access to your content. They have a way to engage with you. So it's exactly the same principle, optimizing their intellectual property, who they are, the relationship they have with their fans, and making sure it's always on, basically.
We have talked for 40 minutes here now about data and BI and fan engagement, etc. Is there something that I haven't asked you that you feel is important to mention?
So, look, Marcus, to be able to ask me every single question that's important, you would have had to read every single word in the book and ask me a question about all of it. Look, it's such a vast area. I think you've asked some tremendously important and interesting questions, because we've covered GDPR. We've also covered people's fear, cultural change. We've covered data. We've talked a little bit about technology. I think the only thing we probably haven't covered is how your listeners are going to benefit from this podcast. So I'm going to tell you how they're going to benefit. The first 3 people that contact you after listening to your podcast will be sent a copy of my book.
Wow, that's
How about
that's great. That's very generous. So send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com, and the 3 first will get the book Winning with Data. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you for giving me the platform to talk about it.
Of course, anytime. The last question that I ask everyone, and you have actually answered it, but I will ask it anyway. If you could suggest a guest for this podcast, who would you suggest?
Yeah, so obviously I talked about Baz because Baz is a colleague of Jeff. He was part and parcel of that model that you talked about. I'm a big fan of a guy called Mick Canetta at Arsenal. He's head of digital, and he has, built this fantastic model at Arsenal. Not only do I recommend him because of his vast knowledge, but I recommend him because of his generosity. He's happy to share so much information and so much knowledge. So Mick, if you're listening to this, please get in touch with Marcus and offer to be a guest. But I've been in a fortunate position, Marcus. I meet lots of clever, talented people, and certainly offline. If you'd like me to give you some introductions and recommendations, then I'd be happy to do that.
I'd love that. Fiona Green, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
You're welcome, and thank you again to everybody listening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to them.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.
With the state of today's economy, it's more important than ever to invest in products that last for years to come. As the seasons shift and get cooler, make sure your closet is stocked with durable layers that stand the test of time from American Giant. American Giant's clothes work harder and are wearable season after season. Their greatest hoodie ever made is made from the highest quality materials that are cut and sewn right here in the United States. So you're investing right back in your local community. Choosing American Giant means taking a stand for American manufacturing and hardworking Americans, something other mega corporations don't care about. From fleece to knit, all in a range of colors for versatile daily wear, American Giant delivers everyday pieces designed for everyday life. Feel the difference of quality, made-to-last clothes from American Giant. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com with code STAPLE20.